the First World War, something that the entire world hadn't seen in its previous 1900 years, and something that was expected to be ended in a swift and quick fashion. Obviously, the history books say otherwise, as the war's massive death toll was the worst world genocide our planet has ever seen. These overwhelming numbers seem to overshadow the small aspects of the terrorizing 4 years and all the heroes that were a part of it. This is exactly what I'm here to address today. The name Francis Pegahmagabow is a name that is only known to Canadian war history students, but is a name that, simply put, should be put up in the front with people known as such as Alvin York and John Cornwell. He was known to be the greatest North American sniper in the entire war. The only known rivaling argument for anyone greater is a man from Australia who sniped at least 150 Turkish soldiers at the Battle of Gallipoli. The following minutes of this presentation will consist of myself examining the life of the silent warrior, as they called him, and a few war stories told by his grandson, Duncan. Before going into his early life stages, I'd like to take a quick detour into the culture that Francis had grown up in. Shawanaga First Nations is an Anishinaabe First Nations band government in central Ontario, which consists of 3 separate reserves. The Anishinaabe Code is currently made up of 21 rules. The rules affecting Francis's life in the greatest possible way would be the following. Firstly, be tolerant of those who are lost in their path. Ignorance, conceit, anger, jealousy, and greed stem from a lost soul. Pray that they will find guidance. This references the story told by his grandson, stating that Francis pitied his enemies, believing that they had only lost their way in life. The other ethics code I'd like to share is, be truthful at all times. Honesty is the test of one's will within this universe. With these 2 of 21 ethical codes Francis lived by, you can paint a partial picture in your mind about how kind and true this man was to himself as well as the rest of the world. Now that we've painted a picture, I'd like to go over Francis's childhood in Shawanaga First Nations Reserve. After his father had passed on from an unknown illness when he was 3 years old, his mother gave him to be raised by a man named Noah, the same man who had also raised Francis's father after his parents died as well. As his father was raised in the way of the Anishinaabe, Francis was raised accordingly. He was taught fishing as well as hunting in the way of the Ojibwe, until he joined the local lumber camps and fishing stations at the age of 12. After deciding to take public school education and succeeding in his studies, it was known that he was a natural at reading and playing music. He followed his career into the field of lakes as he worked up, becoming a marine fireman for the Department of Marine and Fisheries on Great Lakes. He would continue said career until 4 years had passed and the government called upon the indigenous communities for aid in the First World War. Next up on my checklist is public recognition. He may not be a famous war hero with a cool nickname, but Francis is still highly recognized in the indigenous community to be a native war legend. There is even a monument of him which is shown here.
Pegahmagabow's image in this. Oh, let's give a round of applause, please. Drum, please sound. Today's event represents a special coming together of many peoples from many places. We have engaged a broad section of our community, and indeed today, as you found yourself welcomed to this very special and sacred place on the shores of what we know as Georgian Bay, known always to the Ojibwe as Minidugami, the lake, the great sacred lake of the spirit. On these shores, Francis Pegahmagabow stood, lived his life, raised his family. It was from these shores that Francis Pegahmagabow departed to find his way overseas to the First World War. He continues to be known as the most decorated Canadian Aboriginal soldier of all time for bravery. He served in World War I as both a scout and a sniper, and indeed to this day, as per his military record, continues to be the most accomplished sniper in North American military history. So really quite a prolific member of the Canadian Army.
All of this may be cool, but no information will be anywhere near as interesting as the war stories that come back with the soldiers. These stories describe the bravery they showed with their lives on the line. The next story to be told is exactly so, but on a whole other level of bravery.
Pegahmagabow volunteers just days after war is declared. He carries a medicine bag meant to protect him, a gift from an elder. Pegahmagabow is an uncommonly good shot, sniper material. He dashes through no man's land, eluding enemy gunners. Patient. Focused. Motionless. He waits for just the right shot.
You have to have a completely different psyche to be a sniper. They will go to extreme lengths, climbing inside the carcass of a dead horse and waiting for 2 days to make that one kill. Not every soldier wants to do that. Not every soldier can do that. I think that's what sets them apart.
Pegahmagabow establishes his reputation as a formidable warrior. In the next 4 years, he racks up 378 sniper kills, more than any other Allied or German soldier.
With this understanding of extreme bravery, trust in his fellow soldiers, and his extremely strong beliefs spiritually, we can now understand the extent of bravery and patriotism that Francis had during these times to be on a whole other level. Being a war hero wasn't the only thing that made Francis a local favorite after his passing. As I use a quote by his great-grandson from the monument video earlier, Francis was very instrumental in the emerging national Aboriginal rights movement at the time. After the war, he returned to the same poverty and disrespect his indigenous community had gotten from the government before the war. He would often clash with what they used to call powerful local Indian agents, who would keep check on these areas by instruction of our government. They would blatantly disrespect his people and even cut his pension if they chose to do so. This is when he would decide to become a part of politics, defending Aboriginal rights from 1921 to 1936. He spent his first 4 years as elected chief of Perry Island Band. During this time, he sent letters to the Prime Minister and policymakers demanding better treatment for Indigenous people, says the Canadian Encyclopedia, showing the earliest evidence of the beginning of the Canadian Aboriginal rights movement, which would affect our country even to this current day. His political power would skyrocket during the Second World War, however, as he would serve 2 separate terms as chief of the Canadian Indian government. He would also be a part of the National Indian Brotherhood, as they called it, which was a native variation of the United Nations before said organization was even created after the Second World War. Not a short amount longer than 7 years after the war had ended, Francis Pegahmagabow died of a heart attack, which was caused by the enemy gas that he had inhaled during his service to his country, injuring his lungs in the long run. His legacy is carried on nicely, though, as his son and now his grandchildren continue to tell his story and fight for the same goal as he did. Francis was the ideal role model for them, and even after his death, continues to affect them positively every day of their lives. Even if he continues to be underappreciated for his bravery in the war, he was given the proper reward. With his 2 British War Bravery and Victory Medals of Honor, Francis is the highest decorated Indigenous Canadian soldier of all time. He is also worldly renowned to be the greatest North American-born sniper in the First World War. If that isn't a true Canadian patriot, I don't know what it could possibly be. And even after all of that information, I haven't convinced you of his patriotism and love for his country, according to the Canadian Encyclopedia. And I quote, in 2020, Francis Pegahmagabow made the Bank of Canada's short list of people under consideration to appear on a newly designed $5 bill. Thank you.